Watch and burn.
Hey everybody. So tonight I am looking to discuss Gus Van Zant's, I believe, 1989 movie. I think it's from 89. Well, anyways, it doesn't matter. That is Drugstore Cowboy. This tells the story of Bob and Diane, Nick, and Nadine. Yeah, so this tells the story of a group of drug addicts who rob drugstores, basically. Hence the title, Drugstore Cowboy. Cowboys have a history of sort of holding up places for money. And that's essentially what they do here, but they don't use guns. They have Nadine go in and she'll fake a seizure. And while Bob and Diane, the two ringleaders, they will get behind the counter however they need to, of course, most likely because the pharmacist is out helping Nadine. And then Bob will go through, grab the good drugs, and then get out, all the while leaving, say, Diane to steal a paperback novel. Because why not? Because in addition to having a healthy drug habit, you should be reading, because reading is important. But yeah, so that's basically the whole movie. It's just them looking for ways to get into the best drug situation that they could possibly get themselves into, usually by way of robbing pharmacies. And even at one point, Bob takes on a hospital, and he's almost caught in that. Of course, he ends up having to break a window to get out of that situation. And I love drug movies. Like, this is a great drug movie. This is like one of my favorite drug movies. This is right up there with like The Panic in Needle Park and Requiem for a Dream. And then there's even like some feel-good drug movies like Gridlocked with Tupac Shakur and Tim Roth. I would always frame that as being a positive drug movie because nobody really dies in this. This is a less positive drug movie. Nadine dies. And Bob believes that it's as the result of her throwing a hat on the bed. See, Bob is sort of he's a superstitious dude. He believes that if you know, the dog story, for example, oh Christ, and because they discuss dogs, that means that there's a 30-day hex on the crew. And Diane's like, yeah, we got to just get through the 30 days, or Bob's got to get through the 30 days. You know, we just got to kind of make this as painless as possible because Bob, like I said, is very superstitious. And he says, like, the ultimate bad thing you can do, superstition-wise, is to throw a hat on a bed. And Nadine does this. And then Nadine overdoses on some of the badass drugs that they got from their most recent score at that point in the movie. And they told her not to take any because she wasn't ready for it. And she didn't listen. She took a bunch and she overdosed. And they're in a hotel. And that's wouldn't be the end of the world because you could probably sneak her body out in the middle of the night. But there's also like a police convention, I think it's like a detective convention going on with all like police detectives and whatnot. And the hotel, motel, whatever, is packed with cops. And needless to say, that causes a number of problems for Bob and Diane and, Nick now, basically, because Nadine's no more. So there's only 4 of them left. So they ended up, Jesus Christ, they ended up hiding her body in the ventilation in the ceiling. And that's how Nadine is retired. And it's sad because Nadine's just a kid. And that's sort of how this whole movie is handled. Like, there's nothing really wrong that happens in this movie other than Nadine ODing. That is the most tragic part of this film. Next, of course, to the dog story. The dog story is simply just that Bob and Diane had this dog. And it got away and they looked everywhere for it. And somehow the cops knew that it was their dog, and the dog led the cops back to their place where they had a bunch of drugs and everything. So they arrested them all. And then they put the dog down. So the dog story, I suppose, is a little rough. But then next to the dog story, just Nadine dying is the most tragic thing that happens. But you can tell that the 3 of them are really affected by Nadine's passing, that it's not, her character and her death isn't treated with any kind of disrespect. They're just sort of thrown into having to run this gauntlet and have to compete with all the cops outside. And that's the only reason why they choose to dump her body in the ceiling of the room that they're staying in. They didn't do it, again, to disrespect Nadine. They did it because they didn't really have a choice. But then at the same time, this does still show sort of how quickly drug addicts will move on and how, you know, this lifestyle is not for the faint of heart, because on Monday everything could be fine, and on Tuesday you could be hiding a body in the ceiling of a motel that you're in, you know? So again, it still shows the complexities and the tragedies and the sort of like the minefield that is drug addiction. And it does a really good job of that, which then leads me into my favorite part of this movie is the fact that William Burroughs is in this, and he plays Tom the Priest. And Tom the Priest is a really good old dude who, no matter how hard up he might have been for drugs, no matter how few drugs he may have had, he always shared. Bob bumps into him at one point when Bob is attempting to straighten out towards the end of the film. And that's the description he gives of Tom the Priest. He says that no matter what, Tom would always share his drugs. And again, Tom is portrayed by William Burroughs, the author of Naked Lunch and Junkie, and a notorious junkie and drug addict himself, who led an incredibly wild and fucked up life. He ended up killing his wife during a game of William Tell gone wrong. He got away with it too because he didn't mean to kill her. They were drunk and very aggressive with each other. And like I said, they were playing William Tell. I think they were trying to shoot a glass off each other's head or something. And he ended up shooting her in the head and she died. And so to have somebody like William Burroughs in the movie, it adds such a layer of authenticity. Gus Van Sant has made this movie. It's so gritty and it's so lo-fi looking and it's so real. But then the fact that you toss in William Burroughs and it makes this movie epic. Everything leading up until this point, had William Burroughs not been in this movie would still have been amazing and endlessly compelling, and it has so much rewatch potential. Like I've seen this movie countless times over the years because it flows. It has such a fun sense of direction in it. It's like it understands itself so completely that it's not going to make any mistakes. Like Gus Van Sant and company knew exactly what they were going for when they set out to make this movie, and they nailed it plainly. Like, and then getting William Burroughs in this, it just makes everything so genuine. It's just like dripping with realism because there's nobody like more hardcore than William Burroughs. You know, maybe had they got like Chuck Bukowski or some shit in it, like like Charles Bukowski in it. Maybe had they had Bukowski and Burroughs together, because Chuck Bukowski, of course, or Charles Bukowski, sorry, he is the American poet who he's really well known, but I think one of the things that he's better known for is he wrote the screenplay, like the story for the movie Barfly with Mickey Rourke and Faye Dunaway. And he drank a lot. Charles Bukowski liked to drink. And William Burroughs liked his drugs. And my God, had they had both of them in the same movie, this would have been like the coolest movie ever made. I mean, again, Bukowski has absolutely nothing to do with the world of drug addiction. But nevertheless, when I think of William Burroughs, I think of Charles Bukowski. And right now I'm reading one of Bukowski's books, one of the collections of his poems. So he's kind of on my mind. There's an incredibly sad poem that he wrote about the movie Barfly in there. But look, I'm going to stop talking. Let me make sure I said everything I wanted to say. Oh yeah, that's right. James Remar is in this. He plays Gentry, the head cop. And oh, that's right. I should point out too that the track that they have playing, the song, the music they have playing during the end credits is Desmond Decker's The Israelites. And this was the first place that I heard that song. I saw this movie on First Choice Viewers Channel back when I was a kid. And I remember the end credits always freaked me out because I thought that the chorus from The Israelites was "The Hills Are Alive." And that used to freak me out when I was a little kid. Whenever I'd see this movie was on, I'd be like, oh fuck, don't watch the end because it's that song about how the hills are alive. Because it's like, oh, the hills are alive. Except it's not saying that. I realized that a few years later when I really got into Desmond Decker. I was like, it's the Israelites. He's saying the fucking Israelites, Adam. It's not the hills are alive. And yeah, so I think actually that's where I'm going to leave it. I'm going to leave it on a note where I looked stupid. So, like always, thank you for hanging out with me for, almost 10 minutes while I discuss Gus Van Sant's, I believe, 1989 film, Drugstore Cowboy. Like always, if you like this review or you like this movie, don't forget to go out and do something nice for somebody. It's easy. Hold a door, give $1 to charity or some shit. But most importantly, like always, never forget that the world is a hell of a lot better because you are in it. And no matter how lost you may feel or how you may feel like you're drowning or you're suffocating, you just feel like you can't breathe, you feel like you're all alone, you're not. There's a lot of people going through exactly what you're going through, right at the exact minute you're going through it. And my God, things would be so much better if you could just find a way to network with these people. But I haven't figured out how to do that myself, so yeah. But it's true. Don't forget, you're amazing. I'm getting out of here. Have a good night.